Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced at North Idaho College on the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guest.
I am so pleased to welcome you to really a long series this summer titled Celebrating Humor and Music, Conversations with Comedians and Musicians from the Past. Some years in the past, we have used this format at North Idaho College. We do a symposium. We call it the Chautauqua format, and scholars come to our campus portraying famous people in history, and you'll see over the next 9 or 10 weeks some very famous people from the past portrayed by these scholars. And so in character, we welcome to the program Moms Mabley, a very famous person in the 1950s and 60s in this country. Moms Mabley was one of the most successful entertainers of black vaudeville, a stage earning over $10,000 a week at Harlem's Apollo Theater. And at the height of her career, she became well known both there and on television. In the 1960s, she became known to a wider white audience playing Carnegie Hall in 1962 and making a number of mainstream TV appearances in the 1960s. She was billed as the funniest woman in the world and often tackled topics too edgy for many other comics of her time, but certainly she addressed such issues as racism. Welcome to 2007, Moms Mabley. Welcome to our time, and we look forward to interviewing you today.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. How you doing? How you doing out there? Moms is just saying hi to everybody.
Well, just like you were in your time, you were so outgoing. We so appreciate that, and we welcome to the program our regular panelist, Janelle Burke, who's an attorney in the state of Idaho, and she will start today's questioning.
Oh, she attorney?
Yes, she is an attorney.
I might need to talk to you afterwards, all right? Mm-hmm.
I'll be happy to talk with you. And actually, I want to talk with you right now, and I want to find out something about you. Can you tell us a little bit about how you grew up? You were Jackie Mabley when you were growing up, is that right?
Well, actually, I was born. When I was born, I was Loretta Mary Aiken, you know, and I was one of the younger children of 12, and I was born in Brevard, North Carolina. Although some people call it South Carolina, but you know, at that time, North, South, whatever, but it was North Carolina, although some folks have written it a little wrong. It was Brevard, North Carolina.
And there's a very difference between North and South Carolina.
That's right.
That's one who came from North Carolina myself.
Thank you. You are North Carolinian too.
Yes,
well, we are. You're my brother.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, I as a very young child, you know, I loved to sing and dance and do all those kind of things, and kept the whole family laughing because I was always telling jokes, you know. But some vaudeville folks came through, and I got picked up by Butterbeans and Susie. Butterbeans and Susie took me out on the road, and that's how I got my start.
How old were you?
Oh, I think I was about 15, 16 years old, and cute as you want to be. I was cute back then.
And you had a quick wit?
Well, I guess that's what you call it. I guess that's what they called it, a quick wit. Mm-hmm. I was light on my feet and quick with an answer. So that they picked me up, boom, boom, you know, and I went on out on the road.
Did you marry later then?
Oh, you're talking about where I got my name, yes. Moms Mabley, from. Well, you know, I had, after a while, I was out on the road and got a little older. I got a boyfriend named Jack Mabley. He's by the name of Jack Mabley, and, you know, he took a lot from me, so I figured least I could do is take his name. So I became Jackie Moms Mabley.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Miss Mabley, and you performed today at North Idaho College at the time we're taping this program.
Yes, I did.
And you had an audience that just loved you.
Well, I had a really good time.
Well, you had some interesting stories, and we shall go through some of those. One is that you married someone much older than you, and you don't have very many kind things to say about older men. Is that correct?
No, you know, I like, you know, they accuse me, so this is where I might need an attorney, you know what I'm saying? They accuse me of liking old young men. And I say, I'm guilty as charged. I do like, don't bring me no old man. I can't do nothing with an old man. He can't do nothing with his own self. So I can't do nothing with an old man. I like some young. And but when I was a young thing, about 15 years old, My daddy, back in the day when Moms was coming up, your daddy told you who to marry, told you what to say, what not to say, told you everything. And told me, got this old man. And I married this old man. He was puny, skinny, thin, weak, old as water, and twice as weak, this old man. And he was so old that when we stood up at the preacher, and the preacher said, who will take this man? The undertaker stood up and said, I'll take him. Anyway, yeah, I had that old man. I could wait for him to die. Finally, but, my granny always said, don't speak ill of the dead. She said, if you don't have nothing good to say, don't say nothing at all. So I say, he's dead, good.
So you followed your grandmother's advice.
Yes, sir, I did.
Now, Miss Mabley, I believe while you were married to this older man, his sister died, and there was a funeral, and I believe you said he was 97 or so.
We was at his sister's funeral, in fact, and the minister came up behind him, tapped him on the shoulder, and said, how old are you, Pops? He said, 97. And the minister said, well, I declare you best not even need to go on home. You might as well just stay right here.
Janelle Burke.
Well, during the height of your career, you made quite a lot of money as a vaudeville act.
Yes, I did.
And so who managed that money for you? Did you take care of it?
Well, yeah, Moms does know how to take care of her money. I got my pocketbook right here. I got my pocketbook, comes with me everywhere I go. But my brother was out on the road with me, and he was kind of my manager. Made sure that, everything, the contract I was, what I was promised is what I was given. That was the main thing, that whatever we agreed to was what we got in the end. So my brother helped me with that. Yeah, he helped me with that all the way through my whole career.
Were you able to perform in most places that you wanted to perform? And where did you stay? What kind of lodging did you find when you were out on the road?
Well, back in those days, everything was segregated. So we had, although we were making a good living out on the road, we couldn't stay at any of the finest places because they didn't allow colors to stay in there. So, and I was the only woman on the vaudeville circuit doing stand-up. Everybody wasn't doing stand-up. I was the first and only black woman out on the road doing stand-up back in those days. So my accommodations were not always the best. But Moms didn't mind. You did what you had to do back in those days.
Well, now we've talked about some serious things. Let's talk about another one of your funny stories. So do you have a funny story you'd like to share with our viewing audience right now? Perhaps one about, traveling, or perhaps something
Traveling. Well, this is Idaho, right? We're out here in Idaho. Well, when Moms came out here, now they didn't treat me real nice out here in Idaho. I have to say that. I have to say that the popcorn farm is one of the best. I wouldn't mind. Moms would not mind coming back out here to see you folks.
Well, that's great.
Now, Idaho is a long way from New York City, mind you. Right. So in order to get out here to Idaho, Moms had to take 3 planes, 2 cars, and a donkey. That's how far y'all is out here. And Moms does not like flying. I don't like to fly. I figured if the good Lord wanted me to fly, he'd have given me some wings. So that's why I went out and bought some feathers, just in case. So anyhow, I'm on the way out here. The plane's taking off, and Mom's head starts hurting and aching. And I said to the stewardess, honey, I can't hear nothing. My ears are stopped up. Can't hear nothing. So she said, Mom's here, chew this chewing gum. So I started chewing. And I was chewing, and I chewed some more, and my ears still stopped up. We're flying high up in the sky over the great Rocky Mountains, And I said, honey, please, Mom's head is hurting, and I feel like I'm about to die. So she comes over to me, and she says, Moms, drop your jaws. Well, I misunderstood her. And I caught a terrible cold. Yes, I did.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, in addition to speaking of your deceased husband, who was much, much older than you, you also had a lot to say about political issues.
Oh, yes.
And share with us, because in your time you were really brave and out front dealing with things like racism, you used humor to do that, but tell us some of the things that you said to your audiences.
Well, you know, first of all, I said they ought to elect Moms president because I could clean this country right up. They ought to elect me president. But I figure if Elizabeth could run England, I sure could clean up the White House. You know what I'm saying. But they got this thing back in the 60s called integration, right? Integration. And, you know, it's where you mix up the people with the other people, different people all together. And I know that was a hard road to hoe because folks didn't want to mix up together. My little grandson, he was the onlyest colored child in his class, and it just seemed like the teacher didn't want to teach him. You know, he would raise his hand and the teacher would look this way. He would raise his hand and the teacher would look that way. She'd go to little Jimmy and she'd say, Jimmy, spell cat. And Jimmy would spell C-A-T, cat. And then she'd go to little Johnny, and she'd say, Johnny spelled rat. Johnny, little white boy, you know. And Johnny'd say, R-A-T, rat. And then finally she'd come over to my little grandbaby and she'd say, Franklin, spell chrysanthemum. He said, what color? She said, pink. He said, P-I-N-K, pink. You know, that's how you got to get over. You know, you got to do what you got to do.
Mm-hmm. And in that, though, audiences that you performed in front of really could get that message. Humor is extremely powerful. Now, in your performances, were your audiences, because you were in the North mostly, like New York and Chicago and other places, was your audience an integrated audience, both people of color and white people?
Well, you know, I started out in vaudeville with the they call it TOB, Theater Owners Booking Association. You know, that's when I wasn't making much back in the day, and we would tour and do shows mostly for colored audiences in them days. And then when I got a little more experience under my belt, I moved on up to what they call the Chitlin Circuit. You know, places like the Chicago clubs and the Cotton Club and the Apollo. You know, and back in those days, there were black entertainers mostly performing for white folks. I mean, it was still segregated, and colored folks could see you perform, but they would have to see you from the kitchen, you know, or from the balcony maybe in some theaters, you know, eventually. So we did a lot of performance. I would say that I performed mostly for white folks once I started making more money, and until I broke into television, you know, and then it's for everybody. That was something totally different altogether.
You also had a very important movie not too long. I believe you passed away in 1975.
That's right.
And so, but you also had a very important movie that you did too.
Yes, I did, and I was very proud of that movie. It was called Amazing Grace, and that movie, I played Grace Teasdale Grimes. That was my character's name, Grace Teasdale Grimes, and I sang Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved, you know, on and on and on like that. And the movie was about, well, I guess what they call it is urban renewal. That's what the movie was about, you know, and that movie is very current. I believe if young people watch that movie to this day, it would still speak to them. It would still speak to the issues that are current in our society today. Grace Teasdale Grimes mobilized the community to get the folks out to vote, particularly the young folks, like right up here on North Idaho College, on college campuses. She mobilized the kids. It was in Baltimore at that time at Morgan State University. And she mobilized those kids to get out for the vote, and they elected the first black mayor in the city of Baltimore.
Based a lot around her work.
That's right. Grace Teasdale Grimes.
Thank you.
Amazing Grace.
Well, you could have sang all that if you want to. You got a beautiful voice, Miss Mabley. Janelle.
You went into television, of course, as the medium began to grow, and you did some things in television. Tell us what kind of a character you often played on television, and maybe some of our viewers will remember seeing you in the 60s.
Well, you know, on television, I mainly did myself. Jackie Moms Mabley. You know, I didn't have a television show of my own, but I appeared on the Smothers Brothers, the Ed Sullivan Show. You know, often Bill Cosby. You know, he had a talk show, and I would do my act on the show. I did mostly movies, and none of them were real popular movies at the time. I think my most famous movie was Amazing Grace, and right before I passed on. But I think probably the Ed Sullivan Show might have been the most famous and most a show that maybe more viewers would have watched. You know, I know when I was little, I used to watch the Ed Sullivan Show.
But you sometimes appeared as a bag lady or that kind of a persona in your act.
Mm-hmm. Well, it looks like I'm a bag lady. The only bag I carry is my purse.
Actually,
my purse.
Yes.
Actually, yeah, my purse. It's my bag, and I can jump out of the bag too and get down. But anyhow, I just wear the things I like. You know, I just wear the things I like to wear, and I always tried to be the woman that my granny raised me to be. You know, my granny, she lived to be 118 years old. That's for God's honest truth. And she always told the truth. So moms try to emulate my granny and tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Now, my granny lived to be 118, and I remember one time when she's about 108, I asked her, I said, Granny, when does a woman, you know, get to the age where she don't want no more boyfriends? And my granny looked at me and she said, honey, you're going to have to ask somebody older than me because I sure don't know. That's my granny.
She kept her youth.
Mm-hmm. So the character I play is in honor of my grandmother. Straight talking, truth telling down to earth. That's who the woman is.
Also, in your wonderful appearance at this North Idaho College, you talked about something else that was really interesting to the audience, and that was from the time a child is born, should you not teach them the truth? And you had a dialogue you did that I thought was most interesting. If you'd share that with our audience.
Oh, yes. Well, you know, folks be saying, moms, they have trouble with these teenagers. You know, I mean, teenagers getting into trouble, these young people getting into trouble. Well, I love teenagers. I love them and they love me because moms tells them the truth. The problem is folks don't know when to hip children. You know, hip, for y'all that don't speak jive, hip means wise them up. When is the right time to wise up the children? And I say it's from the day they're born. I don't blame these children. It's the parents I blame for telling these children lies. They ought to just tell the poor children the truth. I mean, and when is the time? From the day that child is born on this earth, that's when you should speak the truth. A child's born with a brain, not a mind. So parents, it's your job to raise up these children. And instead of telling them all these fairy tales, you know, I mean, when the baby gets born, the first thing they want to do is stick their hands in front of the baby's face and say, this little piggy went to market. This little piggy stayed home. What does a baby know about a pig? You're teaching him about the dirtiest, nastiest thing there ever was, a pig. And then when the child's ready to go to school, you say, come on, baby, go on to school and watch out for the lights. Hell, you need to watch out for the cars, not the lights. The lights ain't never killed nobody. Child looking at the lights and the trunk come and knock his head off. You need to teach these children the truth. When they're ready to read, instead of giving them a book that teaches them about life, what you want to give them? You want to give them this Mother Goose fairy tale stuff. You know, I mean, Mother Goose, Mother Hubbard ain't have no dog bone in her cupboard. Shoot, the dog be lucky if he could find a bone in the yard. Mother Hubbard kept her gin up in the cupboard, keeping it, hiding it from all these cats that want to drink it all up. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Jack and Jill didn't go up no hill to fetch no water. Everybody knows water don't run uphill. You know better than that. Jack and Jill wasn't fetching no water up on that hill. And Mary ain't had no little lamb neither. Wasn't the doctor surprised? You know, my brother, My brother died because of them fairy tales. I mean, he listening, they telling him ding dong bell, pussy's in the well. The fool jumped down the well and drowned himself. I mean, you ought to tell these children the truth. Tell them the truth. Raise them up right. Then you won't have no trouble. That's what moms say.
Janelle Burke.
Well, we've talked about some of your views about life, and you certainly imparted those to your audiences over the years. Tell us something, though, about some of the good things that Moms did for other people in her community. You, as a part of your community, and you took yourself very seriously in terms of your place in that community. What kinds of things did you do for people? You had a family of your own.
Yes, I had a daughter, and I had a son that I adopted. I raised him up from the time he was a baby. His mama couldn't take care of him, so he came and lived with Moms. But all the children on the vaudeville circuit were my children, and I tell you, what I love to do is cook. Moms could cook. Ooh, yeah, I could get me a pot of cabbage and some pork and some crackling cornbread, and we would just eat and have a good time. You know, we all took care of each other. And if somebody needed something, Moms was right there to help them out. I sort of raised up some of these young ones coming up after me, you know, ones that didn't have nobody to care for them out on the road, because the road is rough. Times is rough. So I did that, and I always tried to work real hard with my church and civic activities, and, you know, feed the hungry, you know, help out the poor, and children, send them to school to get an education so they could get ahead.
Something else that was important in your life, and that had to do with, as you traveled, you've talked a little earlier all day about it. You lived in a time when it was the beginning of the civil rights movement. In fact, it really moved into the 1960s with Dr. King and others. But as you traveled, particularly years before that, and facilities were so segregated, how were you treated, and where did you stay in the areas that you went that were segregated?
Well, you know, there was hardly no hotels to stay in that
They were only for whites.
They were only for whites. So often Moms would stay on the bus.
You sleep actually on the bus?
Sleep on the bus, because I was the only woman, you know, and sometimes they'd find accommodation, you know, for the men, but, you know, it wasn't right for me to be sleeping with the men, so I slept on the bus. You know, back in those days, we didn't do a lot. Moms didn't get married except one time, and the rest of the time I was engaged 2 or 3 times because they wanted a sample. That's how I got into trouble I got into. But anyhow, I sometimes would sleep on the bus, and sometimes you just sleep sitting up in a chair. You know, you find some place to just rest your feet and rest your eyes and rest your head, and that's all you could do. But there was no hotel accommodations per se, because it was for whites only back in the day. You know, even in the North, honey, everybody thinks it's always the South, but even in the North, yes, sir.
We're going to break character right now, ladies and gentlemen, and introduce to you Dr. Tanya Pedford Waits. She has a PhD and highly educated. She is often described as a playwright, a director, an actor, a poet, a writer, and a teacher. And she's been a friend for some time, and she was here before. She now lives in Virginia, and she's on the faculty at Virginia Commonwealth University Theater Department, where she is head of the department.
Actually, I'm head of performance. Performance,
yes. And you've acted, and you've been in a lot of different roles, and welcome as the real person.
Thank
Tanya.
you. I'm going to, just excuse me for a second.
Surely.
Take out my...
we have a little time left, and when I invite you to come back again for this week of comedy and all, you chose this particular character, and why did you find that your favorite one to play for this particular week's performance?
Well, I grew up. When I grew up, there weren't too many black performers on television. And we would always get on the phone. I mean, as soon as somebody black came on TV, we'd be on the phone. It's like a party line. Hey, so-and-so's on TV. And Moms was one of those characters that I used to love to watch on TV. Yeah. And her type of humor, I think, is straight talking, and it's on the edge. It's truthful without being compromising. I don't think she compromises her views, her opinions, and yet she's still able to speak right on point. And I appreciated her. I appreciated her work then, and I appreciate it even more now. And so when you asked for when this was Popcorn Forum was going to be about comedy and music, she actually is one of the first people that came to my mind. And the fact she was such a pioneer. Yes. She blazed the trail, and I don't really believe she got the proper credit that she was due. You know, Dick Gregory at her funeral said if Moms Mabley had been white, she'd have been famous 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. Now, this was back in 1975 that he said that. Right. You know, yes. So.
Well, you know, and also wasn't it true that she was able to pioneer and blaze a trail as much as she did because she could do things with humor if she had not used humor, although it was natural for her to do that. But if she hadn't used humor, she probably would not have had some of the venues that she had.
That is absolutely correct. I mean, people can hear things through comedy that they wouldn't be able to hear if you just told them straight out, you know. And Moms was always able to laugh at her situation. She was always able to find, no matter how serious or hard, she was always able to find some humor in it. And I think that helped her to persevere.
Unfortunately, time is up, and Dr. Tanya Pedford Waits, we thank you so much for being here. As Moms Mabley, you're a master. And
thank you.
And it's so great to bring her back to life this way, and to to admire her and to give her the credit she deserves. That's what I like about the Chautauqua series. I know one of our faculty does Mary Wollstonecraft, who almost got lost in history, even though she had written a lot. So thank you so much for being with us, and good luck in all your work in Virginia.
Thank you. And you know, Mom's got christened here, at least my performance of her, and I'm going to keep her alive.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you'll be with us again next week at the same time, and we were going to continue our long series on celebrating humor and music through the Chautauqua formats. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running in-house college production on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.